Right now, you're sitting at a polished boardroom table or perhaps staring at a DocuSign linked on your monitor. You have been offered a senior, high-leverage role at a rapidly scaling technology company. You look at the compensation package, you see a competitive base salary, and then you see the price. The equity grant, it is a standard 4-year vesting schedule with a 1-year cliff. You smile, you believe that you have just secured your financial future. You believe you are an owner. You're operating under a catastrophic mathematical obsolete illusion. Equity valuations are violently decoupling from human headcount. Autonomous AI agents are currently replacing entire operational department, rendering the traditional time-based vesting schedules completely obsolete. If you accept a standard legacy SaaS equity model in 2026, you're not securing wealth, you are voluntarily stepping into a financial trap. You must pivot immediately to the performance-based ownership triggers linked directly to proprietary model training and inference efficiencies. Before I completely dismantle the legacy equity model, expose the fatal trap of a 1-year cliff in an algorithmic economy, and give you the precise architectural blueprint to negotiate sovereign ownership before human labor becomes a secondary operational cost, hit the subscribe button and press the notification bell. I post daily videos showing you exactly how to navigate the global labor and capital market using cold hard engineering logic. You do not want to miss these execution protocols. Stop accepting equity templates designed for an era that no longer exists. We are dismantling the status quo to secure your absolute leverage. Grab a notebook, it is time to stop acting like a disposable employee and start negotiating like a foundational architect. Welcome back, I'm Dr. HR. To understand why my approach to the corporate equity, negotiation, and human capital is aggressively different from the standard, comforting advice provided by the legacy startup lawyer and HR departments, you must understand my underlying structural logic. I hold a PhD in Human Resources, a Master's from prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences TISS in Mumbai, and a Bachelor's in Computer Engineering. I do not look at an equity grant as a generous gift from a founder. I look at it as a raw mathematical calculation of a leverage, latency, and risk distribution. Operating on the ground here in Dubai, consulting for Tier 1 corporate entities, venture capital firms, and apex founders, I have monitored exactly how the cap table is being restructured in the age of artificial intelligence. The rules of ownership have violently shifted. Let us systematically deconstruct this highly lucrative negotiation protocol through 5 distinct phases: the headcount decoupling, the vesting cliff trap, the performance trigger pivot, the proprietary data moat, and the sovereign negotiation protocol. Phase 1, the headcount decoupling, the death of a SaaS math. We must first diagnose the exact structural collapse of a traditional startup valuation model. For the last 15 years, during the golden era of the software as a service, SaaS, company valuations were intrinsically tied to a biological headcount. If a SaaS founder wanted to scale from a $10 million in annual recurring revenue, the ARR, to a $50 million in ARR, the mathematics were linear and predictable. They had to hire 100 more sales representatives, 50 more customer success manager, and 40 more software engineers. Because growth required a massive army of humans, founders were forced to distribute a significant percentage of the company's equity, usually an option pool of 15 to 20%, to attract and retrain the biological army. You were granted equity base because your physical presence and continuous labor for over 4 years were mathematically required for the company to survive and grow. In the 2026 AI economy, this linear math is entirely dead. We are witnessing the absolute decoupling of revenue from headcount. Today, a heavily automated AI enterprise can scale from $10 million to $100 million in ARR with a core team of 20 apex operators and a massive cluster of autonomous agents. The AI handles the outbound sales, the AI resolves the customer success tickets, and the AI writes the 80% of the backend code. What does this mean for your equity? It means that a human labor is no longer the primary engine of growth. Raw compute and algorithmic orchestrations are. Therefore, founders and the venture capitalists are holding the equity. They no longer need an army of 500 people, so they are not willing to distribute the same percentage of the company. When you are offered a 0.1% of a company today, you are being evaluated against the machine. If you accept a standard equity package designed for the SaaS era, you're failing to account for a hyper-efficiency of an AI era. You must realize that your value to the firm is not your ability to perform continuous low-level labor over 4 years. Your value is your ability to build, train, and orchestrate the autonomous systems that will ultimately generate the revenue. You're not a worker bee. You are the architect of the hive. You must negotiate your equity based on the massive architectural leverage you are bringing, not the hours you sit at the desk. Phase 2, the vesting cliff trap. Time versus output. The most dangerous, insidious weapon deployed against tech workers in the standard vesting system. The legacy models dictate that your equity vests over 4 years with a 1-year cliff. This means that if you leave or are fired before 365 days have passed, you walk away from absolute zero ownership. In the 2018, this made sense. Product cycle took years, building a market moat took half a decade. In 2026, the 1-year cliff is a catastrophic trap. The velocity of the AI market has fundamentally broken the concept of a time-based vesting. Imagine you are hired as a lead AI integrator. Your mandate is to take a legacy logistics company and completely rewire their operations using customized large language models and autonomous agent network. You work 80 hours a week, you map their entire value stream, you build the data pipeline, structure the proprietary vector databases, and successfully deploy an AI infrastructure that slashes their operational cost for $5 million a year. You accomplish this monumental architecture feat in 9 months. The system is flawless. It is autonomous. The company is now highly profitable and hyper-efficient. And then, at month 11, the CEO calls you in a meeting. They inform you that your role is being eliminated because the system you built is running perfectly and they no longer need an expensive human architect to maintain it. You are fired. You miss your 1-year cliff by 30 days. You leave with zero equity. You took all the risk. You built the brain, you engineered the absolute core value of the enterprise, and the legacy time-based equity model allowed the corporation to legally steal your wealth. In a hyper-accelerated AI economy, your maximum value is delivered at the very beginning of a life cycle, when the architecture is being designed and models are being trained. Once the system achieves autonomy, your day-to-day operational values drop. Time-based vesting is a tool designed to extract your foundational genius and then discard you before the equity legally transfers. You must completely reject the premise that times equals value. In the age of artificial intelligence, output is the only metric that matters. Phase 3, the performance trigger pivot, architecting the contract. If the 4-year time vesting schedule is a trap, how do you secure your ownership? You must force the corporation to pivot entirely to the performance-based ownership triggers. You do not tie your equity to a calendar. You tie your equity to an undeniable mathematical milestones of architectural deployment. When the founder hands you the standard kata or the ShareWorks equity agreement, you slide it back across the table. You execute the reframe. I am not an employee trading hours for a paycheck. I am a foundational architect building your autonomous infrastructure. My equity will not vest based on the rotation of the earth. It will vest based on the algorithmic value I inject into your balance sheet. You map out the exact structural milestones of your mandate, and you assign massive blocks of equity of achievement of those specific goals. Trigger 1. Proprietary model training and deployment. Upon the successful integration and live deployment of a proprietary agentic workflow that autonomous handles 60% of Tier 1 customer support queries, 25% of my total equity grant vests immediately regardless of my tenure. Trigger 2. Inference efficiency and cost reduction. Upon the architectural optimization of the backend LLM calls that reduces our raw compute inference cost by 30% month over month, another 25% of the equity pool is unlocked and fully vested. Trigger 3. Revenue automation milestone. When the outbound AI sales infrastructure I design independently generate $1 million in net new annual recurring revenue, the remaining 50% of my equity grant vests instantaneously. This is the ultimate unshakable leverage. By typing your ownership directly to the success of the AI infrastructure, you completely eliminate the threat of a 1-year cliff. If you are a genius operator and you build the system in 6 months, You get your equity in 6 months. You align your compensation perfectly with the hyper-velocity of the market. The founder cannot object to this structure without revealing extreme bad faith. If they refuse to grant you equity upon the successful completion of these massive financial milestones, they're explicitly telling you that they intend to extract your labor and fire you before the cliff. You force the corporation to put their equity where their operational bottlenecks are. Phase 4, the proprietary data moat where the value lives. Negotiating the timing of your equity is only half the battle. You must also fiercely audit what you actually own. You must secure your stakes in the proprietary data moat. The AI era is characterized by rapid, violent pivot. The underlying foundational models, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, Google's Gemini, are advancing at an exponential rate. If the startup you are joining is simply a thin wrapper, a basic user interface built on top on someone else's API, the equity is effectively worthless. The moment OpenAI updates its base model with the features your startup provides, the company is mathematically deleted from the market. When you accept equity, you must insist you're taking ownership in the true, unreplicable asset of the 2026 enterprise. The proprietary data and the custom-trained weight. You must deploy a brutal legal and architectural audit of a corporate structure before you sign the paperwork. Many Apex founders are currently creating complex multi-entity holding structures. They put the generic software application in company A, where they grant employees equity, but they hold the actual valuable proprietary data set and finely tuned specialized model weights in separate holding entities, company B, which they own entirely. If the user interfaces fail, company A goes bankrupt and your equity goes to zero. But the founder retains the massive multi-million-dollar data moat in company B, which they can pivot and sell to an enterprise buyer. You must demand extreme transparency. Does this specific corporate entity hold exclusive IP rights to the vector databases, the proprietary training data sets, and the fine-tuned model weights we are building? If my equity is in the wrapper and not the engine, the offer is mathematically unacceptable. You do not want ownership of a shiny dashboard, you want ownership of a raw intellectual oil that powers the machine. If the equity does not reflect the proprietary data moat, you are working for a doomed company and you are accumulating massive career debt. Protect your leverage, audit the corporate structure, ensure your ownership is anchored to the actual physical intelligence of the firm. Phase 5, the sovereign negotiation protocol. We have dismantled the headcount illusion, we have rejected the time-based cliff, we have engineered the performance trigger, and we have audited the data moat. The final phase is the execution. You must deploy the sovereign negotiation protocol inside the boardroom. This requires an absolute fundamental shift in your psychological posture. You cannot walk into this negotiation acting like a grateful employee. You must walk in acting like an apex institutional investor. You are investing your highly scarce, non-renewable biological bandwidth and your elite architectural intelligence into their system. When the offer is presented, you deploy strategic weaponized silence. You look at the standard 4-year vesting schedule. You do not get angry. You project a cold, calculating, sovereignty. You execute the script. I appreciate the baseline offer. However, this equity structure is based on a legacy SaaS model that does not reflect the physics of the system we are building. You are bringing me in an architect autonomous infrastructure. My mandate is to build a machine that eventually replaces the need for the massive human headcount. You slide the paper back. If I execute my mandate perfectly, I would have built the foundational intelligence of this company within 9 months. A 4-year vesting schedule with a 1-year cliff is a time-based trap that incentivizes slow, inefficient labor. I do not operate slowly. I'm proposing an accelerated milestone-driven equity agreement. When I deliver the proprietary inference architecture that drops your operational burn rate by 40%, my equity vest. We align the ownership directly with the mathematical value I create, not the calendar. The founder will likely push back. They will claim that this is just a standard legal template or that the board won't approve non-standard vesting. This is the ultimate test of your leverage. You do not capitulate. You hold the anchor. I understand the board prefers legacy template because they are comfortable, but you're not building a legacy company. If you require an employee who will sit quietly for 4 years to vest their share, I am a wrong candidate. If you want a sovereign architect who will rapidly build an autonomous moat that makes your company immensely profitable within a year, we must restructure the paperwork to reflect that reality. You force them to choose between the standard bureaucratic comfort and elite high-velocity execution. In the 2026, the desperate need for true AI integrators and the architect infinitely outweigh the desire for standard paperwork. The market is starved for operators who can actually turn the theoretical promise of an AI into brutal revenue-generating reality. If you possess the verifiable proof of the work, they will rewrite the contract. Look closely at the equity offers you are currently holding. Are they designed to reward your actual architectural output, or are they designed to chain you to a desk while your skills are slowly commoditized? Stop accepting the legacy terms of a dead era. The SaaS model is now over. The autonomous era is here. Pivot to the performance trigger, secure the proprietary data moat, deploy the sovereign negotiation protocol, and the AI proof your equity before human labor becomes a secondary operational cost. Process the data, execute the strategy, and I'll see you at the top.